Pope Benedict once said, "Mercy is the central nucleus of the gospel." It caught me when I read that Pope Benedict said it, especially this year of Luke. Mercy is certainly the core of the Gospel of Luke. The face of Jesus is certainly the face of mercy. And of course, last Sunday, the last action of Pope Francis in this year of mercy was to focus on prisoners, inviting prisoners and their families and all those who care for them into St. Peter's. And he said on that occasion, "Don't be a captive to your past, but a new history can now be written." And I think the same is true for each of us. So often we're prisoners of our past, but a new history can be written. Our diocese too need not be captured by the past, but a new history can be written because we focus again and again on God's mercy. The prophet Ezekiel presented a little dream or a little vision that he had tonight. So the angel led him to the entrance of the temple, and the vision opened up for him water that flowed and brought forth every kind of thing that was of life. And it was for all, for everyone. The year of mercy, I think, is like that vision. It's that vision that says it's been opened up something about life for us, for everyone. And every kind of life is open to us. Let's not be a prisoner to the small little world in which we live, but let's think about how we can live in a bigger world, with a bigger vision, with a bigger sense of life. Paul's call to us in the letter to the Corinthians talks about God's building. Paul may well have succeeded Christ as God's building, but he says he's laid the foundation and someone else will do the building. And so we're all called, he says, to build carefully. And for us then, the careful foundation that we lay for our diocese, for our church, for our own lives, is this foundation of God's mercy. The face of Christ for our world, that our church, that each of us shows, is a face of mercy. Nothing is more basic, nothing is more foundational for us. Paul said, "The Spirit of God's living amongst you." And that Spirit of God living amongst us has revealed to us this year a whole emphasis on the face of mercy, of God's mercy for us. And God's mercy to each of us, God's mercy to our community, but also for us to be that face of mercy for our world. For me, it's been an exciting time. I've been excited time and time again as the word mercy has leapt out in a way it's never leapt out in the words of prayers and readings that it has before. I've been excited and energised by it in a way I've really loved this year. Some ways I've hated it. Someone comes and says, "You got any extra food, Father Mick? Can I get a ride home, Father Mick?" And I say, "What would Francis say?" "Yeah, okay." And so sometimes it's been a grudging response of mercy. But I know I've been called to have a joyful response of mercy. I know something deeper is called from within me. And I think the same for all of us. And Paul says, "You're God's temple. You're sacred." And especially for us this year, the sacredness of those who are poor. The temple of God is particularly found, as we're reminded, in the poor in our community. A couple of weeks ago, I was particularly struck by the story of Zacchaeus. And what line struck me really amazed me that it struck me, was that Jesus looked up at Zacchaeus. That's the line that's stuck in my brain because I've read that story, we've all read it many times, and Jesus walked past and Zacchaeus had to climb the tree because he was so small and he had to look up. It makes sense. But there was a call to look up at Zacchaeus. When we look up at someone, we admire them. We see the beauty in them. We see the goodness in them. When we look down on someone, as we could on Zacchaeus, the tax collector, and we put them down, we despise them. We find ourselves making judgments to make them worse than ourselves. And so that little line, Jesus looked up at Zacchaeus, has really stayed with me over these last few weeks and said, how am I looking up at people and seeing the beauty and the goodness? The year of mercy is that call to each of us to say, how can we look up? How can we see the face of God? How can we not make the judgments which put people down? How can we look at Zacchaeus and see how his life was changed and how generous he became because Jesus looked up at him? And so for each of us, the year of mercy calls us to look up at the poor, not to look down, to look up at the poor. They're the gift of God's mercy. They're the face of God to us, the ones who bring the very mercy of God to each of us. Don't ask me how many times I've been to Townsville this year, but I guarantee every time I've been to Townsville, almost the front page of the Townsville Bulletin or one of the news items is young criminals. Is that right? Cars stolen, houses broken into. And all our response is, let's get more police on the road to stop them. There hasn't been a response, as far as I can see, from a parish or a community, puts their hands up and say, let's call a little meeting, see what we can do. What can I do? We've got a similar problem, maybe much smaller. The other day someone told me they were in our toilet block. We've got a public toilet with a public shower, about 2 o'clock in the morning, and they saw some people injecting drugs. So I said, what did you do? He said, he pulled a knife on me. So he said, I walked away, but I went back later when they'd left, and I found in the cistern of the toilet all these syringes. So the next day, I went to take a photo of them. And I thought, I better not let anyone see me taking a photo of the toilet. So I closed the door. And behind the door in the graffiti is, I, with the heart, God. I love God. So the very ones who are looking for some sense of relief are the very ones who are also looking to me for some sense of God. Over the last month or so, I've been saying maybe the very basics we can do is invite them in to prepare a meal and to eat it between 8 and 12 when they're on the road. There's a little thing that we can do because meals are really important. Luke's gospel tells us every time Jesus invited someone to a meal, their lives were changed. Look at Zacchaeus. Look how generous he became when he was offered a meal. In a way, the call to mercy is the call to the love story. It's to say, how can God fall in love with us and how can we allow God to love us? Because as the gospel reminded us, before the Passover, Jesus went up to Jerusalem and to the temple, to the Father's house, and went off crazy because you've turned it into a marketplace. The dollar becomes more important than the people who have come to worship. The holy dollar, the building, whatever it is, the money becomes more important so often in our lives and drives us more than does our relationships with those who are poor, those who are in need, those of us who see the sense of the need of mercy. The dying and rising in our lives is really that call to die to ourselves and to rise to be the face of mercy, to rise to acknowledge the sacredness of those who are in pain, to be a community, a face, an agency, a school, whoever we are, a parish, that is merciful to those who are poor. And so we come tonight to give thanks for this great year. Nothing more can we say than thank you to God for what He's offered us this year. It's a great gift to us. And of course, any gift that's given to us isn't meant for us alone, but it's really meant to give us energy to be that gift for others. And it's why for 2017 I said, let's try and see on our local levels, in our own diocese, can we be that gift of mercy for others? The energy, the life that we find in being the face of mercy and experiencing God's mercy, can we find it and embed it, make it the foundation of our lives? Let's make the extraordinary year not only something that's ordinary for us, but something that's very basic to us. It's the foundation for us. Let's make a new history for ourselves, for our community, for our diocese. Let's renew the basics of God's love for us, revealed in the face of mercy. Let's make our future one of a vision for opening up life of every kind. Let's make this year live on in our hearts by renewing our building of the church, each of us, as being the face of God's mercy. In a moment, I invite you all to make a commitment over this next year to make that face of God's mercy, to be the door of God's mercy for our world. And we come to this table to be renewed as we do time and time again for a life that's broken and poured out, for a life that's God's mercy, God's life given to us, that we may live this face of mercy, that we may be the face of Christ, that in what we do and what we say, this gift that we've been given this year will be the gift that lives and continues to give.